As you might be able to tell from our readings, what we're talking about tonight is fear. And in this series, what we've been talking about is fear and what Jesus coming at Christmas brings to our fear. And tonight, what we're talking about is a fear of God himself. My freshman year of high school, I played on the soccer team. And that year, we got a new coach. And he was one of those guys that you didn't want to mess up around, okay? I'm sure you know somebody like it. You don't want to mess up around this person. He was intense. He was easily irritated and easily upset. Just to give you an idea of the kind of guy he is, after a loss, which we had a lot of that year, after a loss, he wouldn't say too much. He would be pretty quiet. He'd be pretty reserved. And you could tell that he was just stewing over the loss. He was just frustrated. And he expected us to be frustrated too. Being high school boys, we weren't always frustrated when we lose. We like to win, but we like to just have fun in general. So you'd have to be careful, though, not to laugh or to joke on the bus on the way home from a big loss. Otherwise, we were going to hear it from the coach. At the next practice, too, we'd hear about what went wrong in the game before, all the things that he picked up on that we did not. And we'd usually end up running quite a bit as punishment after a loss. I remember one time staying late to finish up a test I had missed, to do some extra studying or finish up a test. I forget exactly what it was. But I had let him know that I was going to be a little late, and he was not happy with me when I showed up late to practice because he expected me to prioritize the soccer. He was a young guy. He was trying to prove himself, and that's why he took everything so seriously. But, as you can tell, his serious and his harsh attitude, it was also a problem for him. Problem between him and the rest of the team. The team, me and the other guys, we didn't really respect him, to be honest with you. We didn't really love him because we didn't feel supported. We didn't feel like he had our backs. We didn't go into games with confidence of victory, and we feared him and what he'd do if we underperformed or if we messed up. Now, our attitude should have been better to him, but my point is, in many ways, because of who he was, we feared him. It's never fun to have someone you fear in a position of authority over you. That's never a fun thing. You've all had a teacher you've been terrified of. Or you've had a coach that's condescending and cold-hearted to you. You've had a boss who's always ready to belittle you and let you know when you've made a mistake. A parent who is quick to punish. In these kinds of relationships, we want these people over us. We want them to be happy with us. Not because we want to make them proud or because we want to succeed for them, but because we fear them and what they're going to do if they're not happy with us. Now, we don't know for sure, but I think you can make an argument from our reading that this is how Adam and Eve saw God in the garden after they disobeyed him. They may have seen God as a taskmaster, a person that they feared and were afraid to let know that they messed up. A wrathful God who was going to punish them, bring his full force and power down on them. So they acted accordingly. They hid from him. They didn't want to get in trouble, so they hid. They tried their best to avoid the God that they were scared of and the wrath that they thought they were going to experience from him. But of course, like most times, when you try to hide your mistakes or you try to avoid the person who's going to punish you, it doesn't work, and it only makes things worse. That freshman year of soccer, our coach, one thing that he'd make us do is he made us run through the woods on the cross-country trail for conditioning or just to have something for us to do during practice. And I grew up in Connecticut, and so we didn't like this because there were rocks, there were roots, there were hills up and down this cross-country trail. It wasn't nice and flat like we're used to out here in the Midwest. It was rocky, it was hilly, and we'd have to do it with our cleats on. So none of us enjoyed doing this. It was bad for our cleats, and frankly, maybe even a little bit dangerous for us. So what we'd used to do is if we were fed up with him, if we were just sick of it, again, this definitely is not the right thing to do. But what we would do is we would run about a quarter mile down the trail, and then we'd stop. We'd talk, we would relax, we enjoy a few minutes of rest, and we would time how long we had been there, so that way we'd know we could just cut through the path right there, get to the exit, and then be right back on the field. In other words, we cheated the system, okay? Pastor cheated the system. I shouldn't have done it, but I cheated the system. I can only imagine how mad and how upset our coach would be if he knew that, though. I mean, could you imagine how frankly mad he would be if he had just walked a quarter mile down the trail and found us sitting there just kicking around and juggling a ball we brought with us, or just sitting and talking and doing nothing? He would be livid. We'd be running full field sprints by the end of practice. That's what we'd be doing. Now, just imagine for a minute if you were in Adam and Eve's shoes, or fig leaves, I guess. You had just disobeyed God. You tried to outsmart him. You did the one thing you weren't supposed to do. You broke the only rule God had for you. And you realized something wasn't quite right. The world and everything, it feels different and it feels wrong, and you are scared. And now God's looking for you. And you hear him calling your name. He has the power to do much, much more than just make you run sprints. He brought you into this world, and he can take you out. And as we see all the ways God's wrath is on display in the scriptures, he could punish you like nobody else could. Adam and Eve, they feared God in that moment, and rightly so. All of us, we're taught growing up to fear God. We learn that God is all-powerful, that he commands obedience and punishes disobedience. We learn that he hates sin. He literally can't stand for it. He cannot tolerate it. It is who he is. Something that we can't help but do, he cannot stand for. We memorized in our confirmation classes, or we read in the small catechism, that we are to fear and love God by following his commands and doing all that he calls us to do. It's ingrained in us. We are to fear and love God. We are taught that Jesus is returning to judge the living and the dead, and we fear what that's going to look like, and we hope we land on the right side of Jesus. And all of that is true to a degree. We are to fear God. But this is important. Fear does not mean that we should be afraid. But often we are afraid. Even the German pastor Martin Luther, during his time as a professor at the college in Wittenberg, Germany, before the events of the Reformation, way back when in the 1500s, he was terrified. He was terrified that he wasn't good enough for God, that he was going to be punished for his sins, punished for his mistakes. There's a story that we hear from Luther, that there was this stone carving of Jesus' face in the cemetery gate at the church in Wittenberg where Luther preached and taught and often passed by. He walked by this gate a lot. And in this carving, on one side of Jesus' face, out of his mouth, there was a lily coming out of one side of his mouth. And on the other side, a sword. Now, that's kind of a weird image, but here's the symbolism behind it. The lily, it was a sign of peace. It's a flower. It's a sign of peace, a sign of salvation, a sign of the resurrection. We have Easter lilies up here on Easter Sunday. It's a sign of salvation, resurrection, all good stuff. And you can imagine what the sword represented. The sword was a sign of judgment, was a sign of punishment for those who did wrong. And Luther wondered when he met Jesus face to face, what was he going to receive? The lily or the sword? Peace or punishment? I think sometimes you and I, we wonder the same thing. What's it going to look like to meet Jesus face to face? And what's he going to say to me about my life? Should I look forward to Jesus' return, or should I be afraid? After all, as the proverb we just read says, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Maybe I should be afraid. Now, as your pastor, I want to make this crystal clear. We should fear God. We should fear God. But we should not be afraid of God. We should not fear God as a punishing master. Not as Adam and Eve or Martin Luther feared God at that time. We should fear God in a different sense. We ought to fear God, not in the sense that we are afraid of his punishment against us, but in a sense of awe, a sense of wonder. This is our God. A sense of respect for the God who, as we talked about on Sunday, has always provided for his people in the past so that they can have a future with him. Psalm 111, the psalm that we talked about last Sunday, that highlights God's past faithfulness to his people. It ends actually by quoting this proverb: "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom," is what the psalm says. "All those who practice it have a good understanding." His praise, God's praise, endures forever. Or the praise of the godly man to God, I should say. You see, having a fear of the Lord is not to be afraid of your God. It's not to be in terror of God, but it is a fear that is reverent, a fear that drives you not away from God, but towards God in praise and in worship as the God who made everything, including you and I. We fear God in a reverence for who he is and what he has done, but we have no fear of punishment from our God. He is not a taskmaster or an authority to be feared, but he is a gracious God, a compassionate Father who always loves you. Just look at how God interacts with Adam and Eve. I mean, just think about all the things God could have done. He could have called them out and reamed them out from the start for what they did. You broke the one rule I had for you, Adam and Eve. He could have gone exactly to where they were, crouching in the bushes. He knows where they are. He could have showed up as they were in the act of disobeying him, and he could have put a stop to their rebellion against him. He could have made them never exist just like that. He could have been done with it, clean slate, let's start again. But what does our God do? He calls out to them, knowing exactly where they were, scared and afraid. And he says this: not what have you done, not I am going to get you, not I am going to punish you. He says, where are you? Where are my people who come and talk to me every day? Where are you? God is not seeking them out in punishment, but he is inviting them to realize what they've done. He uses their sin and the ruining of his world as an opportunity for them to come to him, as an opportunity for God to patiently, lovingly, compassionately teach them and to show them what they've done and why it is a problem, just like a father does for his son after he spills juice on the floor again. God invites them to show them what they've done and what he's going to do next. He could have come in wrath. He could have wiped the world clean of their sin. He could have started over, but he chooses to use their sin. He chooses to use their disobedience and their faithlessness to him to show them exactly what kind of a God he is and how much he loves them. He loved Adam and Eve so much that he was willing to allow his creation to be ruined so that he could still have forever with them. He was willing to overlook their rebellion against him so that their hearts could be turned back to him. He was willing to allow thousands of years of suffering, sin, pain, and death in the world, and maybe thousands more, of which his own son received himself, so that creation would know what the fear of the Lord is, that the fear of the Lord is looking in awe and wonder and bowing down before our God and his love for you and I. The fear of the Lord, it looks like this. It looks like God killing an animal in the garden so that Adam and Eve would have clothes to stay warm and be clothed instead of naked. It looks like Jesus, God's own son, dying on the cross and rising from the grave, undoing death, sin, and all suffering so that you and I could have life. It looks like Jesus returning to judge you, believers in Jesus, not based on what you have done, but based on what Jesus himself has done for you on the cross. You and what you have done in this life, that's not what Jesus judges you by. He judges you by his love and the price that he paid for you, and you always get the lily. You get peace and not punishment. The fear of the Lord is looking with wonder and awe upon the face of a tiny baby who himself is God, coming to show you in his life, death, and resurrection how much he loves you. The message of God's every action throughout Scripture is this: that you may know that you are loved. You are redeemed. You are saved. You are forgiven, and you have peace, not punishment. And when you begin to grasp, to understand, and to comprehend that your God is willing to do all of this for you, when you start to grasp God's love for you, you begin to understand what the fear of the Lord means. It means a God who is willing to do anything to save you. Not only did I play soccer in high school, but I also played baseball. And for all 4 years of high school, and for many years after that, we had the same coach coach that baseball team. He was a little bit different than my freshman year soccer coach. My baseball coach, he wasn't as worried about wins or losses, but he was concerned about how you played baseball, how good your fundamentals were, how much you understood the game, and how he could make you better, how he could take your weaknesses and help you with them. He wanted to make sure you put school first and were excelling there before you excelled on the field. And when I didn't play baseball for a year and chose to play golf instead, he understood. And then he welcomed me back to his team the next year with open arms. And even had me start. And it wasn't because I was good. I'm terrible at baseball. And even when I did have a terrible senior year and played awfully, he still made sure to support me, to lift me up when I made a terrible fielding mistake or when I struck out again. The only time he raised his voice was when there was an issue with character off the field, never with an issue on the field. Every player on that team loved, respected, and trusted him. That's the type of fear you and I ought to have for our God. Knowing that he is all-powerful, knowing he can do anything he likes, knowing that he's in control of all things, but also knowing that he loves you and he will never punish you because he has given you peace in Jesus. Amen.